All right, guys, welcome in. Apologies for some technical difficulties. I'm just not a computer guy. So if something like goes wrong randomly on my end, I just have no clue what to do about it. I think we're good. I think it's maybe my system, so we'll continue to work on that. I was joking with Rob off air, like I just if I do something the same way every day and then suddenly something doesn't work, I got nothing, when it comes to electronics. So I think we're here. Hop in the chat. Let us know if we're all right. It's not gonna cost you any show. We're just gonna go 10-10 to 11-10 today. The hockey folks or whoever come after us, Rob, are gonna have to deal with it because it's Martin Luther King Day. And you know what that means? Basketball, morning until kind of night when they move out of the way for the college football playoff championship game, which goes later tonight. I see the CBS Sports Network is still going to put one game up against it, though. So at least we have college basketball in that window as well. Rob Vino, welcome in. I want to see if I can hear you, so tell me how your weekend went.
Weekend was good, college basketball-wise. Friday, good. Saturday, probably a break. In fact, it was a little less profitable on Saturday. I think we had a minus, 2 point something on Saturday, but bounced back yesterday with a Houston Cougars team total over 80.5, something you don't generally play the Houston Cougars to score a ton of points just because of what they're predicated on, defense and slow pace. But Bobby Hurley's team gives it up. And Houston had, Trig, I think they had 19 in the first 4 minutes, and it just coasted from there. So good yesterday. Looking forward to today. Obviously, this week, I will say real quick, as long as we're going to do semi-promo here, again, since December 1, it's really been fantastic here for college basketball. Number 2 at WagerTalk posted about plus 33 units at a very small basis. So we're hoping to keep this rolling here. I think we got some stuff today that looks pretty good.
Yeah, there's a lot of, this is my type of slate today, Rob. The entire MAC is playing at 2 p.m. today. Why they didn't space those games out, I'm not sure. But over 7,000 tickets already sold for Siena's game against Fairfield. So maybe there is something to the 2 p.m. day off MLK Day start. We're going to get into all of it, Rob. I watched a considerable amount of Big East basketball the last week. I went to the Seton Hall UConn game on Tuesday. On Saturday night, I was at Villanova St. John's. On Friday, we talked about, Providence and the Providence game, the DePaul Marquette game. So there was the Big East, had like 2 of the 7 games that were on Friday night. And that's where we're going to start today, even though by no means do I think this is the feature game. I can find about 10 I'm more interested than this game. It is Big East. It is the only power conference game. It is national television. And I guess my general thought about all the Big East basketball I watched is, man, this might be the worst the conference has ever been. All of these teams are bad, in my opinion. It's got me questioning how good UConn actually is, who continues to let some of these lesser teams hang around. Providence, we talked about on Friday, being up against it, not having Jason Edwards, but yet maybe it was just a spot where they found a way. It just felt like one of those games where after they got killed earlier in the week, couple losses, that maybe they just somehow found a way to get the win at home. You referenced Creighton maybe being in a tough travel spot. It certainly looked like that was the case. Providence gets the win. Now they hit the road where they look like the superior team again, but maybe they aren't. That's kind of like the take I have in every Big East game. Well, maybe they're the better team or maybe they're not, because all of these teams are very average. So Rob Vino, Providence Marquette, Fiserv Forum, how do you see this one?
I will just say that by nature of this spot, situationally, if Marquette's going to get a win, this would be the type of spot where they could get a win. There's not many winnable games in this league, even if it is a down year for Marquette at this point in time. Saturday, again, Marquette really strong first half. Shaka Smart pointing out how disappointed he was in the team in the second half, their inability to compete on the defensive end after being really good in the first half. 20 minutes of basketball, really good. 20 minutes of basketball, not so good, leads to another loss for Marquette. Providence, as you mentioned, without Jason Edwards for the second straight game, but it doesn't seem to affect their offense whatsoever, Adam. I mean, they just score. Providence, for what it's worth, guys out there that are just unaware of how high scoring Providence has been. Last 4 games, 201 total points scored in an overtime game with UConn, 181 against Xavier, 170 against Villanova, a game where we cashed a Villanova team total over ticket. And then Saturday, 181 against Creighton. And Providence is right there doing their share of the scoring. They just can't play a lick of defense. We'll see if that win on Saturday represents anything where Providence is concerned. I have my doubts. I think they just are who they are at this point in time. All that being said, last 3 games Marquette has played have all gone over the total as well. As hard as Shaka Smart, and I won't say that because, yes, Shaka Smart has had a lot to say, but I think it's been more in a kind of a deflection mode or in defense of his team, where he is basically pointing out that the reasoning for the troubles that they're going through this year is a little bit of non-cohesion, a lot of youth, and that they just have to get used to playing 40 minutes of basketball. Still, my first inclination here, as usually is, was toward total. And in this case, it's just hard to play any Providence game under at this point in time, no matter where the number is. As long as it's under 175, you have to look at a Providence total. Haven't played the game. I do think it likely goes over again. Providence only knows one way to play. Marquette has been playing the same type of way. Gave up just a boatload of points to DePaul in the second half last game. So I'd probably look over Adam. And as I said earlier, if somebody wanted to make the case for Marquette here, I really wouldn't argue them off just because situationally based. Unless they go winless, they got to win somewhere. And maybe this is the one. This is one of those winnables.
Yeah, I think the thing I struggled to get there with Rob for Providence was the number, right? Like, even though Providence got the win, I think they might match up okay. And you take Edwards off the floor. Yeah, that should hurt the offense. But the defense has been better without him, in my opinion. I don't know if he was, and it's hard, that you got to take that with a grain of salt because Providence defense has not really been good at all. But I almost think they've looked a little bit better defensively without him. So the fact that they have been able to score still enough, like with him not on the floor to win that game Friday night, is encouraging. That being said, it brings me back to, I wonder if there was a little, I don't want to call it addition by subtraction because it's certainly not that from a personnel standpoint, but my buddy Greg did say he was kind of one of the guys that like maybe wasn't getting along with some of the incoming freshmen. I mean, listen, I'm not here to judge people's character, Rob, but third school in 3 years, like, sometimes it's not them, right? So who knows? Again, that's just a total assumption. Do I want Providence going on the road here? Not really. Do I think they're maybe better than Marquette? Yes. So it's a tough one for me. I think I lean Providence on just the basketball stuff, like on the floor. But off the floor, I'm not sure you now throw a road trip into Providence after they had their sort of home, like, rally win on Friday. Maybe this is where Marquette does the same thing.
Yeah, and real quick on reasons why it's tough to get to Marquette. You talked about why it's tough for you to get to Providence. Tough to get to Marquette because they're 5-14 against the spread. They're 2-6 against the spread in league play. They're 1-3 against the spread at home. There's nothing good to say about Marquette from a point spread perspective. This game is either Marquette slight favorite or pick 'em, depending upon where you choose to shop. I'll just close it up by saying I might not get to the over, but it's probably the only way I could look here.
All right, that standalone game that I referenced in the open for college basketball tonight is the game that Garth wants to talk about. So thank you for the donation, Garth. Very much appreciate that. We'll put that $2 toward whatever is causing my system to not work the way it should work, and it's always worked all this time. But that's 9 p.m. tonight, national TV. North Carolina A&T hitting the road to take on the Hampton Pirates. Garth wants to know about the total, so I'm going to let Rob Bino kick this one off. I have an opinion on the side, but Garth is saying NCAA under 68.5 on the team total. Rob Bino, this was a team that last year was shaving points, but they had a couple guys that could fill it up, I guess, when they weren't trying to throw games. Those guys have left. It's a less skilled team, maybe a little bit more predicated on defense and just slowing the game down. So does Garth have a good total with under 68.5 for NCAA?
Well, let's just start where I will generally start once conference play begins, with sort of the bounce back or negative bounce back theory. A&T just gets caught up in a 97-89 game with William and Mary, one that goes up and down the floor, one that's more suited to A&T because they want to play faster. They don't shoot it real well, but they want to play faster and play pretty well against William and Mary. I think we cashed that William and Mary team total over ticket. Garth, you may have been the guy that was on that as well, and maybe that's one of the games you donated for last week. I feel like it was either Garth or Bayou, one of those two, who wanted to speak about that game. For A&T here, a little bit of a different story, right? You're going to play Hampton now, not necessarily as fast as William and Mary. You're not going to get caught up in that style of game. The problem becomes for A&T, as we talk about all the time, are you capable of taking your fast-paced offense against a pretty solid, slow, really methodically slow-paced opponent? And I always say, I think that slow-tempo teams, especially those at home, bother teams that want to go quicker. So if A&T gets slowed down, which they should probably tonight because Hampton's the home team, and you add into the equation that A&T is not a good shooting team to begin with. Hampton, as I mentioned, pretty good in defensive on the defensive side of the floor, and 70th in the nation in three-point percentage defense, which really works out here if you're trying to play A&T total under. A&T, not the best three-point shooting team, but they do put it up quite a bit. So from somebody who didn't play the game, Garth, I would say all the elements, all the fundamentals add up to being on your side here, under 68.5. The situation, I think the bounce back that I talked about also ends up being on your side because you just come off a high scoring game, a pretty rare, decent shooting game for A&T. So you could only expect that to come back to the norm here. For what it's worth, they shot 67% from 2-point land in that game, Adam, the other day, and 44% from three. Those are way above average for A&T. If that comes back to earth a little bit and the pace slows down, I'm not going to argue Garth off of this. Probably in a good spot here with team total under 68.5.
Yeah, I wanted you to start with that one because I have a pretty strong opinion here. It's just not so much totals related, though it seems like it fits, right? Because I think Hampton's a really good option here. It was kind of wanted to see what happened with that number. It's one that I probably would just lay the 5.5. Rob, you're going to have to be my odds board guy. Yeah. So if I think it's right around 5.5, probably right around where it opened. But the point is, Hampton defensively is much improved. Listen, this is not the Hampton teams of a couple years back. Ivan Thomas came in, former Ed Cooley assistant. He's from the area, and it's, I believe, his second year in charge at Hampton, totally turning this program around. I mean, when I was down there 2 years ago, it was the final year of the old regime. That team was just a circus, Rob. It was just no one played any defense. You never knew who was going to play each game. Guys just chucking shots. It was a disaster. And Ivan Thomas has come in. He's actually brought a couple guys I really like. Well, I got to say, it does frustrate me as a Siena guy to see Michael Ellie as their leading scorer, since he was supposed to be like the next big thing for Siena a couple years ago. And I feel like he faked an injury every game. That's neither here nor there. But now he's playing great for Hampton. Leading scorer, 13.3 points per game. And you want to talk about Hampton defense, Rob. This team has dug in on the defensive end more than once, even since conference play has started. Held UNC Wilmington to 49 points. That's pretty impressive. Really just had a brutal 3-game stretch where they had to go on the road and play Wilmington, Campbell, and Charleston. That's a tough 3-game road stretch. And all but one of those games was a close competitive game. Last time out, over the weekend, they only lost to Charleston by 4. On the back end of that road trip, Rob, I know you don't love, and I'm sorry, actually, I misspoke because I was going to say I just saw Charleston play. They didn't play them this weekend. So that was last weekend. So I know you don't love backing teams coming home after like a couple road games. They've actually had 9 days to prepare for this game. I think Hampton probably blows them out. NCAA, if they're not scoring, can absolutely get crushed. And then you talk about their most recent game, William and Mary is going to let you score some points because of the way they play. This might be a scenario where Hampton wipes you out defensively and is suddenly up 15-20. And that's hard to come back from, especially when you play the way NCAA plays. So yeah, I like Hampton quite a bit here. That's going to be a parlay candidate for me, I think. But we'll see how the rest of the show goes.
Yeah, and real quick, you made a key point there, Adam. Coming off of road trip, but with 9 days to prepare is totally different than the scenario we talk about all the time, where an extended road trip and then playing, a couple days later. 9 days, an awful long time. Rest versus rust, of course, always comes in. But when you're defensive minded, I don't think rest versus rust is really an issue. It's more shooting and cohesiveness on the offensive end in that case.
All right, let's stay in that league. One of the early national TV games today. A couple folks in the chat want to talk Drexel and Towson. Rob, I was pleasantly surprised at my trip to Towson on Thursday. Great little facility. I love the campus. I love the city. Really enjoyed myself there. And it was very nice to see Towson get the win that sort of, I guess, confirmed what everyone thought about this team going into the season, was that they had a real chance to contend in this league. They brought back 2 of the best players in the league, Dylan Williamson, Tyler Tejada. Not many teams in this league are able to bring their best players back. It's just the reality of what's happening to some of these leagues at this point. Of course, UNC Wilmington goes and takes the best players from everyone else's team and puts them on their team. They're now like a CAA all-star team. But Towson was able to keep their 2 best players. They play fantastic defense. They're a great rebounding team. Yet somehow they managed to start 0-4 in conference play. They come out, they get the win over Northeastern. They get a much bigger win on Thursday over College of Charleston, or Charleston as they want to be called now. Rob, I know you're going to have to lay some points, and that's terrifying to do with Towson. I kind of think the Tigers keep it going here. Anything for you, Drexel, Towson in this one?
Well, I think you could make the same, might not want to step in front of the trip. This might be a game where you want to play both teams, Adam, because Drexel, I tell you what, I caught about 25 minutes of that game against Monmouth on Saturday, which was a complete destruction. Drexel was in control of that thing from start to finish. Now, that's not to say Monmouth is on Towson's level, but it was the 3rd consecutive game that's been pretty impressive out of Zach Spiker's bunch. Beat Stony Brook by 19, beat William and Mary on their home floor, which to me, I believe I had the William and Mary team total over in that game. It was part of my, 3-game quest to get my money back with the Bill and Mary team total. That one didn't do it, so the subsequent one did. But then to come up with a 22-point win on the road at Monmouth, they're playing really good defense at this point in time, as good as Towson is defensively. If you go on season-based overall statistics, Drexel is right there too. And Drexel shooting the basketball. And it was funny for me, and I think you've been to Drexel already this year, so you got a good look at them. But generally speaking, under Zach Spiker, this is not a team that shoots well. It's a team that crawls up the floor, tries to play some defense, but they're never really a good shooting team. So the game against Monmouth, I guess I can't call it an outlier here at this point in time. But that being said, Adam, 15 of 27 from beyond the arc is kind of outrageous. You just don't duplicate that the following game. So Towson defensively probably shuts Drexel down a little bit. I would say Drexel defensively is going to be tough on Towson. This one came back to the total for me, but it's so low. In modern day college basketball, the opener of 123 can be gotten to by mistake. It's now pushed up to 125, 126. Of course, you have to because it's so difficult to play under 123. I guess you just take your shot and say, man, it's got to at least be a 63-61 game, a 64-60 game. Both teams can have the capability to score. So I think I would choose to. I don't know if 5.5 is enough. Let's put it that way, because if Drexel does not can 15 threes, then 5.5 might not be enough here. For me, I think an earlier number, total over, was better. Later number now, 126. I don't know. 65-60 sounds reasonable. You'd lose an overbet there. So for me, no response in this game. Can't really play it. But I'm going to say I'm pretty impressed by what Drexel's doing inside the league right now. They're on a roll that I wouldn't want to bet against right now.
Oh, see, I have no problem betting against Drexel. That team has no talent whatsoever. I know I'm going to explain how they won 3 games in a second, but I saw Bayou in the chat making a case for Towson, maybe on the money line, saying it'd be hard for Drexel to pull away, and they probably won't lose that game. You could go Towson to Hampton, little CAA money line parlay right there if you wanted to.
There you go.
I actually think they will probably cover. Now, the scary thing with Towson is even in the Charleston game on Thursday, which they control throughout, they controlled that game throughout, they still manage to have a scoring drought. And it's almost like you're going to, the way Towson runs offense, it's almost like you're going to get a drought at some point, no matter what. It's almost unavoidable. It's shocking to me because, in my opinion, they have 2 guys that really should be able to create their own shot and at least get a bucket when the team needs a bucket to avoid the big drought. But even against Charleston, a game that ended 61-52, Williamson only had 7 points. They just don't create great shots. Now, the reason this total is so low is Drexel just doesn't have a talented roster. So yeah, they're going to have games where they maybe get hot from 3, but look at those last 3 games. The William and Mary win is impressive, but William and Mary can be if they hit a game where they're just not in sync offensively, not scoring, or they run into a style that they don't like, because this is Brian Earl. He was up at Cornell for years, and it would happen to Cornell sometimes where they would look like world beaters, just running everyone out of the gym, and then they'd hit a game against a team that wasn't necessarily better than them, that just had a little bit different style, and it would really trip them up. And that's what I think happened to William and Mary's 64-58 final. Those other 2 games are against teams that can't shoot. Stony Brook can't score. I mean, I don't know how a game ends 56-37 in college basketball today, but it did. Monmouth can't score. They don't have much offense. So here, even though Towson struggles to score, I think if you get the normal Towson effort here, you're likely going to see a final similar to the Towson-Charleston game where, they just will their way to an 8 to 10 point win. That's kind of how I see this one going. As far as Drexel, is concerned, Zach Spiker's a tremendous coach. Loved him at Army. I thought he would do a better job at Drexel. I thought he was going to actually win here. But the reality is, he doesn't get anything from the portal. He just doesn't have a ton of talent on this team. So I think you've seen Drexel do the maximum, Rob, of what they can do the last 3 games. I would not want them on the road having to do it against a Towson team that likely crushes them on the glass and is just a better version of a inefficient team is Towson than Drexel. I prefer the better version, which is Towson, and the fact that they might be able to get some cheap points. So, yeah, Bayou says Towson has much more chance to dig out of a hole to come back rather than Drexel. The defensive rebounding, offensive boards. I'm with you. I think Towson's the right side there. Okay. All right. We're finally off and running. As you can see, nothing agitates me more than a 10-minute delay that wasn't. Well, I don't think it was my fault. And the reason it's not my fault is I just don't know anything about electronics. So, I can't be held accountable for that, Rob, especially when it happens just out of the blue. Fixer, let's go to this game because this actually tips off in 24 minutes. And since we're on the Colonial or the Coastal Athletic Association kick right now, I mean, they do have I feel like they have center stage today because like all of their games, or at least a couple of their games, are on national TV. Let's touch on the one that's going to go off national TV. First game off the board, Rob, 11 a.m. Eastern. Northeastern's going to head to Monmouth. And this is another very interesting matchup because Northeastern somehow beat Elon, right? We both talked about liking Elon in that most recent game. Northeastern comes out without Yuri Fritz, with 8 guys, I think, on their bench, and they go out and win the game. That being said, I mean, I don't know what to think here because Monmouth can't really score. So, even though it seems like a decent matchup for Monmouth, I don't know if I want to trust them laying points when they just have a hard time putting the ball in the basket. How are you seeing Northeastern Monmouth?
Yeah, it's a complete contrast in styles, right? Monmouth can't score, Northeastern can't defend. Defensive efficiency rating is worst in this conference this year by far. It's a team that's going to try and get their hands on the basketball, try and get some deflections, get some steals. It's what they do best. The rest they don't do very well at all. So can Monmouth make any shots? On the other side, Northeastern does make shots. Second best offensive efficiency team in the league, but Monmouth plays pretty good defense. So can they shut Northeastern down? Funny, Adam, I remember talking about that Northeastern gym, 812 capacity against Elon the other day. They go in there and win. Yuri Fritz, when I saw the number go down from 4 to 3.5, I looked real quick just to see if he will play today. And I can never tell how true this is because we can't get the report straight from Northeastern themselves. But it appears like he's going to play in this game in 22 minutes. If that happens, I can understand the line movement down. However, I can't understand the total going down if he plays. It would be advantageous to the number here if, in fact, the total going over, if, in fact, he was going to play. So maybe a lot of Monmouth defense, non-shooting love. I don't know. But Monmouth is off of that previously talked about Drexel blowout loss, which scares me a little bit in this game. You return home, you got crushed by 22, you only scored 51 points. There's a lot here that, it can be the so-called teachable moments here. And now you're back home on your home floor in a Martin Luther King Day game. I would imagine that there's a little bit of hype when you're home for this particular day, for this particular game. So I don't want to lay points with Monmouth because of their inability to score, but I don't mind the line of thinking that says they should give 100% maximum effort after getting destroyed by 22. In my case, I always tend to lean with the team that can put the ball in the basket because in basketball, it's simplistic, but that's what it comes down to. So I think I would lean toward Northeastern here, and especially if Yuri Fritz is going to play. If he doesn't play, maybe a different story. But if he does play, I think that Northeastern plus points is probably the right side.
A rare disagreement for us, and that's good. I'm glad that we're like, because that's really, what this show is about, just try to share info, talk out, reason out games. And I guess for me, Yuri Fritz, I don't know that he, especially after watching the Elon game, I'm not sure he moves the needle a ton here. So like, I don't think this should move down if he plays. I think it's, it's nice to have an extra body. I think that's like the biggest thing. Yes, he sort of has become their best player by people dropping like flies. Like, he wouldn't be their top player if dudes weren't just dropping like flies, right? Like, so it's nice that he might be back here, but like the Elon matchup. So, we talked about Elon, Billy Taylor, totally changing that team. Last year, they were a team that played a really aggressive zone. It was very much defensive oriented. This year, they've become more offensive oriented, and they really, like, Northeastern just sat in a zone and Elon struggled with it. The problem is, Monmouth's very good defensively. So I'm not sure Northeastern is able to do a ton on offense here. This is a Northeastern team that gets no second chance points. They're a terrible rebounding team. Yes, they're okay offensively, but some of those numbers have been accumulated when they've been more at full strength. And I actually think Monmouth's defense probably plays here. On the other side, the one thing Monmouth isn't dreadful at when they have the basketball is shooting the three. And so if Northeastern goes back to that zone, I could see maybe Monmouth hitting a couple threes and getting some offense that way. The final thing I'll note, Rob, the total, like this game, and this game feels lower scoring. The Towson Drexel game feels lower scoring, but this is like a considerably higher total. I think the other one was in the 120s. This is like low 140s. So maybe you look toward an under there too, but I think I lean Monmouth here.
Yeah, under could be a look at him. The one, and you know me, I'm always looking for these comp games, comp to Monmouth defense, and probably better because they're just a better overall team is NC Wilmington. That game, of course, was played at home by Northeastern, but they got to 78 against NC Wilmington, which is kind of scary. They gave up 87 because NC Wilmington can score, Monmouth can't. But when you can put up 78 on that type of defense, it's a little bit scary for me to think that they couldn't do it against Monmouth. However, to me, the great equalizer is just a 22-point loss to Drexel. Again, maybe I'm just overreacting because I saw a great portion of that game. They did nothing right. And to me, again, as a bounce back guy, I know that in Monmouth's case, that King Rice will have a lot to say about that 51-point effort, and you would expect a much better effort in this game out of Monmouth. So it's kind of contradictory, both sides of the fence speaking to me, and hard to come to a true conclusion.
Listen, I think I've now I've made a case for all three CAA home teams that we've talked about on this show. Listen, there might be something to the afternoon Martin Luther King Day game being favorable for some of these teams that aren't getting big crowds on a regular basis, because I think that's why a lot of them wanted to play today. I talked about, kind of thumb my nose at the MAC, Rob, wanting to play all of their games today at 2 p.m. Then I talked to someone I know over at Siena, where I went to school, and I obviously keep very close tabs on them, still talk to people close to the program all the time. They told me they got 7,000 tickets sold for this game already at 2 p.m. today at MVP Arena in Albany, New York. So maybe there's something to wanting to play this like early tip. Everyone's got the day off. Maybe you get a nice bump here in the atmosphere for some of these teams that, like I was at Towson on Thursday. I felt like there could have been more people there, but something you mentioned to me this weekend that makes a lot of sense is most of the kids at these like smaller private schools, we always used to come back when I was at Siena, MLK Day weekend. Some of the state schools come back earlier, but we always came back Martin Luther King Day weekend, and it was a great weekend because we roll in whenever, hang out, drink all weekend, and we'd have Monday off, like right off the bat to start. No homework because, the semester just started. So I always remember having a lot of fun that weekend. But the kids being back, 2 p.m. start, I have a feeling Siena's going to have like 7,500 people at the MVP Arena today. For a Fairfield team that this team's just bad. I don't know how else to say it. They play hard at times. Chris Casey has to go. He's not the right option to coach that team. The money and the facilities they have, they should be out NILing, out recruiting the rest of the MAC. They just haven't. I think it's because the coach and some of the leadership in place. Rob, I kind of think Siena runs them out of the gym. The only way you beat Siena is with a tough zone defense, the ability to force them to shoot, kind of like Merrimack did, kind of like Colgate did. I'm just not sure Fairfield can do that. And if they can't, I don't see how this game is close.
Well, I mean, again, this is going to sound simple, but Fairfield can't defend. End of story. Yeah. I go back to
not much else to it, Rob.
There really isn't, Adam, honestly. And I'll go back to, I think I've said this before, but in fact, I know I've said it before because you were like, if you want to go, I was in Connecticut at Thanksgiving time. And you're like, if you want to go, I get you into that building, which brand new Fairfield, in my home stomping grounds, right? Fairfield's about 15 minutes from my home as a kid. I didn't go, but I watched that game. I've talked about it before against Columbia. They gave up 106 points in that game. And ever since then, I've kept a slight eye on Fairfield and if they could improve defensively. And it just hasn't happened. They just don't defend. And so you have to be a really poor offensive team for Fairfield to have the slightest chance to hold you to 70 or less. Siena's not a poor offensive team by any stretch. The pace might not be there, but the inability to score isn't there. So I would think that Siena's probably, they come off a thrashing of Manhattan. Could be a good sign here for Jerry McNamara's team. Fairfield hasn't gotten any traction whatsoever this year. Give up 82 to Marist the other day. Not many give up 82 to Marist. I just, second of a road trip here. Not that Marist and Siena are, a 3-hour flight away, but I just don't see Fairfield competing on the defensive side of the basketball of the floor this year. So I would lean Siena that way, but I am going to just segue in so that we can get one half of this parlay out of the way. And I'll stay right where we are in the Metro Atlantic, and I'll stay about 10 minutes away from where Fairfield U is and where I spent 1 year of my college career at Sacred Heart over there on Park Avenue on the Bridgeport-Trumbull line. And I'm going to play the Sacred Heart team total here over 72.5, Adam. Ryder, you were there for the joyous occasion, right? Ryder wins. Ryder. How they won, I'll never know. But since Anquan Hill has come back, he's produced points in all 3 games. And Sacred Heart, which was a pretty good offensive team to begin with, just looks a little bit better. I think it's, this is extremely close. I'm not staring at my notes right now, but I think it's like 19, 21, and 22 points, or 21, 22, and 23 points scored by him in the 3 games since he's returned. Ryder, to me, just not capable of defending this team to the point where they hold them under 73, which is what I need to win here. Now, it doesn't mean I think, I play these team totals a lot of times, Adam, because I fear the point spread. I fear laying big points, so I'll take the favorite to score over their team total. I fear taking too few points, so I'll take the underdog's team total, et cetera, et cetera. Here is the same way. I'm almost positive Fairfield's going to get to their number, whether or not they defend good enough against Ryder, whether or not Ryder has an uprising like they had the night you were there. All that goes to the side if you're just isolating team totals here. But I think all the elements are there. The recent uptick with Hill. Sacred Heart has been a good team at scoring all season long anyway. They play with pace. I know I'm going to get my chances here against a Ryder team that doesn't defend. So that's going to be my end of this parlay today. Sacred Heart team total. And it goes early, which is why we're getting it out there really quick here. Now, as you mentioned, it's a 2:00 start. But Sacred Heart over 72.5 just seems like a fairly easy play to me.
Yeah. Listen, I talked to some folks that went to the Sacred Heart Siena game, and I just said, like it's not the best loss for Siena, but you have to acknowledge that Sacred Heart is getting healthier. And this team at full strength, in my opinion, Rob, was always going to contend in this league this year. So, they went through the Hill missing some time, and they had some other guys, I think, battling illness. I think Ralph Byer missed a game. Giddens might have missed a game. So some other guys maybe missed a game or two here and there. The point is, I think we're realizing that team doesn't really function without Anquan Hill, because Anquan Hill is kind of the one big that can do something other than shoot a 3. And they don't play great defense. So they needed to win that Siena game 86-80. That's how they're going to win a lot of these games. And I think you make a really good point. With him being back, they're going to score more points. Recency, you look at some of the point totals they've scored when he was out, lost to Niagara, only scored 61. Like, I just don't think that's happening now that he's back. So I'm very much with you. What was that number again? Also, not to mention, Rob, since he came back, 19 against Marist, 21 against Quinnipiac, 22 against Siena. Right. He's clearly helping that point total.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. The number here today, Adam, is 72.5. If you want to take it a step further, 2 of the last 3, 4 of the last 6, 7 of the last 9 are Ryder games allowing more than 72.5. So again, Ryder can slow it down as much as they want. The other side will speed it up, and you're going to get enough opportunities here, in my estimation, to get to 73.
Yeah, and two things, and then we'll move on to a different game. I'll wrap up both of these MAC games we just talked about with just a couple extra tidbits. One, Ryder's playing better basketball right now. So I don't just think that this is going to be Sacred Heart blowing them out in their own gym. That probably helps your team total over the fact that it may actually be close at the end of this game. The spread is only 3.5. Ryder played great against Iona. I felt like they deserved to cover the 11 on Saturday against St. Peter's. They just kind of faded at home. So, the fact that it might not be a blowout is actually probably a good thing for your team total. You might get a little extension at the end. Finally, the Siena game, I'll just go back to that for 1 second. Jerry McNamara, when he got hired, he was in town and he attended the game with Caitlin Clark playing for Iowa at Siena's arena. There was 13 or 14,000. Of course, they had the whole thing open for the NCAA tournament. And I remember in his press conference, he pleaded with fans, like, come to the games, get a friend, bring someone to the games. He's been begging for crowds like the one he's going to get this afternoon. If they are not, like, I will be absolutely shocked if they're not ready to run through a wall and just wipe the floor with Fairfield in that game. So again, I don't know what I want to put in the parlay yet. I think we'll talk one more game and then I'll lock something in. But I've got some options which we've gone over on this show. So Garth is going to decide where we're going to go with this next game here. So appreciate the donation. He wants to, and I actually saw some folks asking for some NEC. So Rob Bino, as a former alum of New Haven, those are your New Haven Chargers in action today against Chicago State, 7 p.m. I got to be honest. I don't have a ton on this game. I don't particularly like either of these teams. However, I guess maybe one of the notable things, New Haven having to make the Chicago trip, this is the farthest you have to go in the NEC because they just kind of arbitrarily threw Chicago into the NEC. So after back-to-back wins at home, Rob Bino, New Haven getting back-to-back home wins, which is pretty big for the program. I believe they're now 3-2 in conference play. Maybe a letdown spot going on the road to Chicago State.
Well, certainly. And we talk about it in major conferences, Adam. If you're not used to doing it, it becomes something that's unique, that's different, that may be problematic. And it could be problematic for New Haven here. I'm trying to look at Garth's question as I look up just basic thoughts. Okay, so he's not pointing towards side or total in this one. Let me just pull up the team total numbers here really quick because that's where my opinion would lean in this game. Chicago State. Where the heck are you guys? Wow, I should have had this one right in front of me, but here it is right here. Okay, so obviously close to pick 'em game, close to team totals are very, very close. 63.5 on one side for UNH, 64.5 on the other side for Chicago State. My initial reaction here would be more situational than fundamental. Chicago State's obviously a bad basketball team. But again, Adam, I'm going to go back to something we said earlier, which I think applies to better than half of the games here today. And maybe I don't want to get outrageous and say 75%, but I'm going to say better than 50% of the games is the fact that it's a holiday game with a special meaning that should have home teams fired up. And in this case, as we mentioned earlier, New Haven is the traveler, something I haven't really done into Chicago State's place. Not a very good team. 3-2, maybe overlooking this squad. 64.5 to me seems a little bit low on the Chicago State side. UNH, obviously at 3-2 in league, has done pretty well. First time in, but they're no great shakes, to say the least. That to think that they can't give up 65 to Chicago State here, I think would be my primary look. Now, again, I always preface these things by saying whether I've played the game or not. But Chicago State, I mean, last 3 games, 63 against Fairleigh Dickinson, 82 in overtime against Stonehill, 57 against Lemoyne. And Lemoyne's a far better defensive team, far better overall team than UNH, in my opinion. So those point totals of recency are pretty close to what you're asked to get to here. I would say, Garth, my best shot at this one would be Chicago State to get to 66 in this game. no real opinion on who wins it or loses it, but that's the way I would lean.
Listen, we were on the show on Friday. I said, you know what? I actually ended up playing this. This ended up being my only client play for Friday. It was a winner with Ball State. And I said, you know what? I feel like this is where Ball State gets their first conference win. And they did. They actually kind of dominated that game against Ohio, held on at the end. I think this is where Chicago State gets their first conference win. They're 0-5 in the NEC. Rob, the game they lost against Stonehill was one of the most inexcusable things you will ever see on a college basketball court, maybe even on a high school court, maybe even on a modified middle school. I don't know if they still call it that. But the point is, they should have one conference win. They had a win at Stonehill. I'm not even going to get into it because I don't want to go totally off topic because we only have 4 minutes left. I've told we have to be off by 11. Apparently, they do play hockey on Martin Luther King Day. So, point is, if you want to just see something so mind blowing, go watch the end of the Chicago State Stonehill game, a game they just should have straight up won. So they're 0-5, but they play good enough to win on the road at Stonehill. Here, I'm just straight up trusting my power ratings. I still think Chicago State is just slightly better than New Haven. I have them rated higher. They're getting the home game. New Haven off back-to-back home wins. This sort of outlier trip in the NEC, I think it's a tough spot for them. So I lean toward Chicago State. And Rob, I'll tell you what, because because we probably would have done 10 minutes on another game, but we're not going to have the chance to do it. I am going to so my parlay leg will be the next game that we were going to talk about. It is going to be Prairie View A&M. Now, I was not going to give this out on the show because this is a 3% client play for me, but because I was the one that apparently caused us to be 10 minutes late, taking some accountability here for my system, even though I feel like it wasn't my fault, Rob Bino. I am going to give out one of my client plays that, I'm going to have a couple of them. So we'll give it out. So I played this earlier, Prairie View -2. I do think it's moved a little bit. So what I'm going to do here for the parlay, Rob Bino, is put the Prairie View money line in because it's not going to, it's not going to really hurt the parlay. It's still going to be plus money. And it's -155. So it's moved up to -3. So Prairie View A&M, and here's my reasoning. And I'm going to write this up. So again, I'm going to give you more of a reasoning. It's going to be on the free picks page, WagerTalk. So if you haven't seen the free picks page, go to WagerTalk. There's a tab that says free picks. Every handicapper, Rob, you put a free pick up every once in a while, right?
I do. And generally, it's a client play.
Yeah, I try to put client plays when I can as well. I wasn't going to do it today, but now I am. And so for me, Alcorn State's the worst team in this league by margin, aside from Mississippi Valley State, who's arguably the worst team in the country. Yeah, I feel like the books price them similar for some reason. And I disagree with that. I think Alcorn is a lot closer to Mississippi Valley than they are to any other team in this league. And I just don't agree with how the books have had them priced the last couple games. Prairie View, really impressive win on the road at Southern, the team I thought was going to win this league coming into the year. I thought they played really good against Arkansas Pine Bluff the other day. So again, I saw the -2. I felt like that was way off. So for our parlay, Rob, it's going to be Prairie View money line -155. And then the other leg of our parlay will be the Sacred Heart team total over 72.5. While I run a price on that, is there anything you'd like to promo for today?
Well, let's obviously promo our package, double the CBB firepower. That includes 3 days of all of mine and Adam's selections, all client selections for 3-day period. You can purchase that on either Adam's page, my page. Just go to wagertalk.com. You can purchase it $59 for 3 days. As I mentioned on the Saturday show when we were on with Kelly on Last Call for Wager Talk Saturday version of Last Call, there's really no bad 3-day period to purchase because of the way college basketball is dispersed nowadays. You're going to get a lot of plays. I'm a little less as far as bankroll, but more volume. I don't even know if I'm more volume because, Adam, you have your share of plays too, but a little stronger on your percentage plays. So for whatever, guys, whatever your needs are, you can get the two of us. You see that I like more totals. Adam likes more sides. It's a real good combination package in that respect too. Double the CBB firepower, 3 days, all of our selections, including 5%ers, just $59.
All right, Prairie View money line, Sacred Heart team total over 72.5 plus 214 odds. Hopefully we get this one today, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.